75th anniversary of St. Clement. I missed you. It's nice to be back. I've had this cross on my wall wherever I've lived since the Catholic community in Langley Park, Maryland, gave it to me 26 years ago. And Randy, would you be willing to just walk it up and down the aisle so people might be able to see it a little more closely? Many of you might recognize it as being from El Salvador, and you probably notice right away that it's not a crucifix. There is no image of a crucified Christ. Rather, we see the Holy Family, and angels, and shepherds, and animals. And I think that here at St. Francis Seraph, that's so appropriate, because right before Mass I went by to see the donkeys and the goats, and so to have a cross with animals on it fits right in here. But I never noticed, even though it's above my desk, and I see it every single day, I never noticed until preparing this homily that Joseph is at the top of it. Notice at the very, very top of the cross is Joseph. And I'd like to focus on Joseph, who's so prominent in the Gospel today. Now, do you know the song, Mary, Did You Know? Any of you know that song? Raise your hand. Oh, okay. It's just about everybody. And could you hold on to that, actually, because if I put it back here, there's a 90% chance I'll forget it when I go back. So you can just keep it by your chair. Does everybody have a chance to see it? So there's that song, Mary, Did You Know? And some theologians will say, well, that song was problematic. I think it's a beautiful song nonetheless. And our third graders used to sing it in Camden, New Jersey. And they did a little liturgical action with it. It was just beautiful. Back in 2010, when I was still in New Jersey, I asked in a homily, Joseph, did you know? And I thought that would make an interesting song and a cute homily. And you know what? About a year ago, a music video came out called Joseph, Did You Know? Now we concentrate so much on Jesus and on Mary during Advent and Christmas, especially on Mary's fiat, or yes, let it be done to me according to your word. But what about Joseph? Joseph is featured in today's gospel. You could say Joseph's biggest decision, if I went around and asked you, most of you would probably say it was in verse 19, when he decided to divorce Mary quietly, without shame. Even though as a pregnant, unmarried young woman, she would have had to go into hiding, at least Joseph didn't go public with it, because if he had gone public with it, Mary would probably have been accused of adultery and could have been stoned to death. So that was a huge decision for Joseph. But I think Joseph's biggest decision was in verse 24, where it says that he listened to the angel of the Lord. What would have happened if Joseph had not listened to the angel? We know the consequences if Joseph had divorced Mary publicly. But even if he had continued his plan of divorcing her quietly, what would have happened to Jesus? Mary likely would have given birth to Jesus in secret, and probably not in Nazareth. Nazareth was a small town, and from living in St. Bernard for the past 16 months, I know what it's like to be in a small town. Everybody knows everything. She probably would have gone to stay with a relative or a friend of the family where nobody knew her. And that means Jesus wouldn't have been born in Bethlehem, the home of Joseph's ancestors. The shepherds wouldn't have known about him, and they wouldn't have spread news of his birth. The wise men who were instructed by Herod's advisors to look for the child in Bethlehem, they wouldn't have found him either. What if Joseph, through stubbornness, or maybe through fear, hadn't listened to the angel? Would God have had a plan B? What if Jesus had been born in a different culture, in a different part of the world? And I asked AI to give me 4 countries at random, and it gave me Nigeria, Japan, Finland, and Brazil. What if Jesus had been born 2,000 years ago in Nigeria or Brazil? It would have been a tribal, non-Jewish culture without a written language. So how would word of him spread? If other tribes saw him as a threat and killed him, even if he rose from the dead, who would have known? If he had been born in Finland, it would have been among hunter-gatherers, with just a few thousand of them in a land the size of Texas. So if Jesus had been killed and then rose from the dead in Finland, who would have found out? How would they have spread the news? 2,000 years ago, Japan was transitioning from a hunter-gatherer to an agricultural society. Their gods were nature gods, and they practiced ancestor worship. Who would Jesus' ancestors have been in Japan? But because Joseph, and I love Joseph, I think you probably love Joseph too, right? Because he listened to the angel, Jesus was born in a place where he fulfilled what so many Jewish prophets had foretold. Many people were already waiting for him, longing for him. He was born in a land where his deeds could be widely communicated, not just through the spoken word, but by the written word. First by letters, and later on by the Gospels. Jesus was born in territory controlled by the Roman Empire. Now, for most of my adult life, I've criticized the Roman Empire, and I've criticized how empires in general abuse their power, abuse their authority, and oppress people. For many years, I felt similarly about the United States. Now, I'm 68 years old. I'm highly educated. But just recently have I come to appreciate what it means to live in a land and in a society like ours. Until recently, I never appreciated songs like God Bless America. But I'm beginning to see how, at our best, there is a spiritual dimension to being an American. And despite our problems, despite our terrible shortcomings as a society, at our best, we can create the conditions for the possibility of tremendous good. So Jesus, being born in a part of the world controlled by the Roman Empire, meant that the good news could spread rapidly via roads, via ships, and it could take root among Jews and Gentiles, among women and men, among slaves and free people, not just in Jerusalem and its outskirts, but to what was known then as the ends of the world. Did Joseph know? Did Joseph have any idea what listening to the angel would mean, not just for Mary, his betrothed, but for salvation history? By listening to an angel, he prioritized the deepest values of his faith. But Joseph's decision doesn't just have spiritual implications for us. In the year 2025, it has moral, biological, economic, and existential ones as well. Joseph prioritized the life and the dignity of an unborn child. Joseph prioritized the dignity of that child's mother over his own ego, over his social status, over his human desires. What does Joseph's example mean for us when in so many countries, and especially in the United States, men and women, but especially men, use medical technology and the bodies of oftentimes vulnerable women to satisfy their ego, to fulfill their desires through what's known as surrogacy. Almost 50 years ago, through scientific medical breakthroughs, the first test tube baby was born. And it was a well-intentioned effort to help infertile couples conceive a child. But with today's scientific advances, and with so much money involved, the field now known as assisted reproductive technology, especially the practice of surrogacy, is spinning out of control. In surrogacy, an embryo is created via in vitro fertilization and then implanted in the surrogate mother, where it grows and develops until delivery, at which point the child is given to the people who paid for the process, known as the commissioning parents. Surrogacy supporters say it's not the buying or selling of a baby. It's simply the compensation of a woman for the use of her body during the pregnancy of a child that she knew she would be handing over upon its birth. Now, while that may sound reasonable, the abuses of this system can be horrific. A Chinese billionaire who made his money through gambling enterprises has fathered over 100 and perhaps as many as 300 children via surrogate mothers in the United States, each one able to claim citizenship as a result of being born on American soil. Last year, a couple forced their surrogate to get an abortion after discovering she had posted a picture of herself drinking tequila on social media. And it's possible for a couple to import eggs from one country, semen from another country, form the embryo in a third country, hire a surrogate mother in a fourth country, and after birth, bring the child home to a fifth country. Surrogacy is a largely unregulated $14 billion industry, and it's expected to grow to 10 times that by 2032. There are even scarier scenarios, which should be left for a scientific or a moral theology lecture, not a homily. But if you're interested, just search for Patrick Brown, Reproductive Freedom, and an article about it should come right up. But while a billionaire might think he'll leave an eternal legacy by having 300 offspring, Joseph changed the world by having none, but by raising with great love the one whom he knew God had sent to his betrothed. Can we be like Joseph and listen to the angels in our lives? Can we let God's wisdom and mystery and love guide us in the most important decisions we make? Joseph did. And look what happened. Somehow, Joseph